All right, in today's episode, we're going to talk about changing the narrative for men in today's society. For generations, many men have been taught that strength means staying silent, carrying every burden alone, and never showing weakness. While resilience and responsibility are valuable, these expectations can leave men feeling isolated, emotionally disconnected, and afraid to ask for help. So, what changing the narrative is, isn't about making men less masculine. It's about redefining strength in a healthier way. It's about creating space for men to lead with character, communicate openly, prioritize their mental health, and build meaningful relationships while still embracing responsibility and resilience. So, we're going to talk about what is the current narrative in today's society. So, meaning what messages are men hearing from society today? So, basically, what messages we're hearing is you can't talk about your emotions or else you're weak, especially with social media. You can't talk about it because, it's going to make you less masculine. You can't talk about anything because you're going to be seen as a target. And then with all these other influencers, podcasts, since social media is so big and diverse, you have people saying, oh, you gotta be assertive, you gotta be aggressive, you gotta be, all these things so that way your masculinity doesn't get taken away. But we forget that we're human. We forget that we have emotions. So in that instance, in that sense, is that you gotta just be who you truly are, your true and authentic self, right? Meaning, if you're feeling some type of way, talk about it. Don't worry about what others think because society has told us, has brainwashed us in a way to not want to do that because we're afraid of the rejection. We're afraid of, being told like, oh, don't talk to that person because that person is very emotional. They're weak. They're less masculine. They won't provide for you. They like, you just talk about your emotions and you open up and they give you everything. They're going to tell you everybody everything. So that's what the message is that men are hearing from society today, that if we open up, that we're less than, when it shouldn't be like that. Like, we're human. We go through our own stuff. It's valid, right? It's valid to us feel a certain way. It's valid for us to think a certain way. So for society and social media to tell us and direct us in one way, it shouldn't be like that. And also another one is, how does social media culture and public expectations influence the way men see themselves? So the way men see themselves is that you have all these books and you have all these, social media podcasts, videos that, you know, direct us into one avenue when it shouldn't. It should direct us into many avenues because we are all different. We all think different. So why can't we handle the situation in our own certain way? Yeah, some of us are more emotional than others. Yeah, some of us can handle certain things, but with social media and the culture, especially with culture, it's like you got to handle it a certain way. And then the public expectations, oh, well, in the sense of you got to act like this, even though you're feeling a certain way, even though you're feeling depressed, even though you're feeling anxious, even though you're feeling overwhelmed, still bottle it up. Because if you don't and you show your emotions, then you're going to be seen less than. You're going to be seen as someone that is not, a go-to person, that can be a leader, that can be whatever it is, the public is expecting of you, because expectations are just a sign of failure, because you can't expect someone to perform at that level every single time. Why? Because we're human. We're going to have our bad days. We're going to have those days where we're just going to be like, you know what? Fuck it. I can't do it. and it's up to us as a man, as a person, as a human to overcome that in some way, shape, or form. And that's what we're creating here, a brotherhood. And then the next bullet point is building strong men, not perfect men, meaning no man has everything figured out, right? Growth comes from learning, failing, and improving. And also, confidence is built through consistency, not perfection. So, with all that being said, you got to learn from your failures in order to grow, right? You got to do a trial and error on yourself. You got to constantly revamping yourself. You got to constantly be growing yourself. You can't just say, okay, this is my only method of thought process. This is my only method to process certain things. No, growth comes from failing. If you do something a certain way and it doesn't work and you continue to do it, that's the definition of insanity. You're expecting a different result with the same equation, with the same way, the same thinking and the same mindset. No, you got to think outside the box. You got to get outside your comfort zone. Why? Because if you stay within your comfort zone, then you're going to have that same answer. So the more you start getting out of your comfort zone, the more you don't allow that failure to be a failure. And if that makes sense, you start to be confident in your decision making. You start to be confident in, okay, what's the worst case scenario? And you're like, okay, you know what? I'll be okay with that. Why? Because you've already exhausted it. You've already went through it various of times and various of methods. And that way you can conditionally train yourself and be like, okay, you know what? Let me go attend to this. Let me go do this instead of, oh, let me try this. Because for me, I always say trying is lying. Just do it. Because if you don't do it to the fullest extent, give it 100, then you're really not going to get the solution that you need. You're not going to get the um, real data, the raw data that you really need in order for you to grow, in order for you to become the best version of yourself. And this is a key point for this section right here. Progress is more important than perfection, because if you focus on perfection, you're not gonna you're not gonna meet it, because there's various ways of perfection. There's a perfection in one person, there's a perfection in another person. So to perfection to you can be not perfection to someone else. So don't chase a perfection, just chase the progress, because the progress will have more results than the perfection. So the other one is going to be community over isolation. Men need friendships where honesty is welcome, because if honesty is not welcome within the friendship or even brotherhood community, then who do you have to turn to if you don't have a family member, right? So accountability creates growth. If you have that, friendship where honesty is welcomed, right? They're going to be able to hold you accountable, and it's not in a negative way. They're going to hold you accountable in a positive way, because as a friend, as a brother, I want to see the best for you. I don't want to see you in this negative state. I don't want to see you in this sad, depressed, not yourself state, right? I want to see you in that happy, upbeat, positive energy, motivated, whoever you are. That's who I want to see, as a friend. That's how I want you to, that's how I want to see you. I don't want to see you in this sad state, because then it's going to make me sad. And that's not what I want. That's not what we want. That's what the world shouldn't want, right? So when that happens, isolation often magnifies stress and self doubt. Meaning, if you don't have that brotherhood, that, honesty, then you're just going to isolate yourself for the sole purpose of you don't want to be seen as something or even someone different or someone weak or anything like that. And that's not what I'm trying to create here. What I'm trying to create is for us to have that, welcoming friendship and honesty and accountability. Why? Because if I hold you accountable, it's going to be for the betterment of not only me, but of yourself as well. And we're going to create something positive in the friendship. And brotherhood isn't about pretending to be strong. It's about helping each other become stronger, because your problems could be my problems and my problems could be your problems. And together we're going to solve each other's problems. And that's going to hold more value than bottling up your emotions. Right. And the last bullet point for me is leaving a better legacy, meaning the next generation is watching how us men respond to adversity. So some of us respond by just throwing ourselves in our job, in our work, in our passion, in hobbies, and etc. Right? But sometimes that's not the right way to cope with it. We got to leave something better for the next generation so that they can follow, because all these outdated um, methods are really getting us backtracked. Yes, what our parents did, what our grandparents did was valid, but at the same time, this is the 21st century. We got to upgrade, we got to update our process. We got to update. And how do we do that? It all starts here, it all starts right now. And, boys learn from what men model than from what they say. So, meaning, as a kid, as a boy, you're being molded into the man you're supposed to be, but you're being molded into an outdated version of it. So, when you're out in the real world and you use those methods, they're outdated, they're false in that sense, because it's like it's the 21st century. You can't really do what our parents did because of social media, because of all these influencers, because of all these other things. And I'm not saying to shy away from that. I'm just saying that we gotta, update it, change the wording a little, change the structure a little, not restructure it, just change little wordings here and there, if that makes sense. And also, last bullet point, every man has an opportunity to redefine strength for his family and community. And what I mean by community is who you hang around with, what type of friends you have, what type of family friends you have. So you gotta, you know, be the leader in that family, in that friendship, because that's who, they look up to. That's how it is. That's how it's always been. So if you're going to be the man that everybody looks up to, you got to know and you got to be confident in your situation and in the choices you make, whether it's right or wrong. It doesn't matter. As a leader, you're supposed to lead by example, whether it's failure or growth. So if you lead by, any of those, they're going to see you and they're going to see, oh, you know what? They did this wrong, but it didn't define them. That failure didn't define my dad, my brother, my cousin, my friend. It actually made him better. It made him become the best version. And that's who I strive to be. That's who I model to be, because he didn't let any situation bring him down. Whereas I seen other people, it would bring them down and it would let them stay down for a certain amount of time, right? Or even worse, they would turn to drugs and alcohol. So as a man, you got to be a leader and you got to be confident in all aspects, whether it's leading with failure and overcoming that failure with some positivity and saying, hey, look, you know what? I might have fallen, but I'm going to dust myself off. It might take me a few days, a few weeks, but you got to set that, reminder of I'm not going to stay down. I'm only going to stay down for a few seconds and just get back up and keep on going, because I got to do what I got to do, right? And this is my closing message for you guys. You guys ready? You guys ready? Are you hearing? So changing the narrative doesn't mean abandoning the qualities that make men strong. It means expanding the definition of strength to include integrity, emotional maturity, accountability, compassion, and the courage to keep growing. The goal isn't to create softer men, it's to create healthier men, stronger families, and a better community. And with that being said, tune in for a Q&A because it's about to be
What's one lesson you had to learn the hard way?
What's one lesson I had to learn the hard way? That sometimes in a relationship, whether it's a friend or partner, that when that person doesn't choose you, you have to stop. And for me, I'm the type to not stop, because that's just who I am. Like, I'm going to, because I care about that person so much and so deeply and even so intensely, that I forget that they're entitled to their emotions. They're entitled to their decisions. So if they do not want to continue the friendship or even relationship, then I have to understand that, you know, basically no is no, right? But for me, it was like, no, if I like something, if I want something, I'm gonna fight for it. So that was one of my failures, you know, right? That, I had to overcome because that's just who I am.
I think I can agree with that one. Um, it happened to me too. Um, Sometimes it's too hard to accept the rejection, and one of those lessons learned the hard way, because it hurts. But you gotta move on. You gotta understand. It's like if they don't need you at that time, that moment, or never, just walk away, live out your life.
Exactly, because then you're just gonna be consumed by all those negative emotions like, "Oh, man, if I would've just tried harder, if I would've just done this, maybe if I would have done this," because, they were saying that something underneath it like, "No, I don't want you to pursue me," or, "No, I don't want you to talk to me." And, you being the best friend or even the partner, you're like, "Nah, you know what? Imma prove to them by actions that, I do care about them, or I do wanna see them in a better place," or whatever it is, right? But sometimes when someone says no, no means no, right? And you just got to move on, as sad as it is.
Yeah, correct. Next question is, how has failure shaped the man you become?
So, how has failure shaped me to become the man that I am today? So, in a way, it's shown me what works and what doesn't work, what I should do and what I shouldn't do, what I should pursue just a little bit more and what I should not. And also what I should tweak as well. Like, okay, you know what? This is how I went about it in a certain situation. Well, let me try this other method because that method that I did, it led to self-sabotage, it led to rejection, it led to blowing up a friendship, it led to ruining a relationship, it led to all those things. So that's what, failure has taught me because anytime I see, well, I don't like to say failure, but it's just anytime something bad happened and it didn't go my way, I review it, I see what I did, and I internalize it, and I said, okay, maybe I could have moved a little bit different. Maybe I could have done something different. So when that same situation happens again in my life, whether it's within a friendship, in a partner, with family members, I'm gonna do it the opposite way. Why? Because I already know how I did it that way. Even though the situation might be different with that person or persons or group even, it doesn't matter. I'm still gonna move in a different way. I'm still gonna, try that other option. Why? Because it's a different environment, it's a different situation. So for me, I reviewed myself. I said, you know what? This is what I liked when I did it. This is what I didn't like. And I just move on. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm okay with whatever the outcome is because if you're not okay with whatever the outcome is, then you're always going to be afraid. You're always going to stay in that comfort zone. You're just not going to want to have any growth, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, it does make sense. I guess in my case, I do see failure in my attempts that actually, as the word says, fail
Mhm.
miserably. But then again, after some time, I calm myself and it's like, okay, I know what to do now and not what to do. Like, take the cons and pros of that failure to make me a better man.
Exactly. So that's why you can't really, you know, be consumed by the failure, by the negative, by the outcome that didn't go your way because it's not really it didn't go your way. It's just it's two people or it's a group. So obviously it's not going to go in a certain way that you would like because you're having to take that other person's feelings, thinking into consideration, way of life. So for you to be consumed by it, for you to overanalyze it, for you to be like, "Oh, well, what about this?" Even though you know that person to a certain extent, you still don't know how that person can act or be or think in that moment, you know, split-second moment. So, for you to be consumed by that, don't let it. This is my advice to you on that one, if I can give you an advice. And it would just be to be okay with it and move on and don't let it consume you. Don't overthink, don't overanalyze. Just be like, okay, it is what it is, and it is what it isn't. So from that point on, let me just continue to be the best version I can be. So that way it doesn't happen again, if that makes sense.
Moving on to the next question. If you could change one thing about how society views men, what would it be?
If I could change one thing, basically weakness. I would change the weakness. Is like, okay, for us to open up is a sign of weakness. No, we're both human beings. If women can do it, if kids can do it, why can't men? Right? Like, why are we viewed as, the top tier? Why are we viewed as, the top of the top, the cream of the crop, right? No, we're both human. We're all human. So for me to be afraid, to be scared, to, fall under the impression of I can't express and show my emotions and it's a sign of weakness and I'll be laughed at and bullied at, that's not right. Like that just doesn't fit well with me. That's something I would change. That's one thing I would change is just weakness, right? Because it's like, why? That's how it begs the question is like, why are we viewed or why can't we be viewed like that? We're all human beings. Why does it have to be, oh, you're a weak man if you are vulnerable, if you show your emotions, right?
Yep, definitely. And last question to close. Um, if every man listening could take one step toward becoming a better man this week, what would you want that step to be?
Nice. That's a good one. That's a good one. So, one thing, if you're listening, if I'm talking to you, this is for you. Not this is for you, but this is for you, right? Because we got to change that wording as well. So, one step to becoming a better man is just really not allowing outside influences dictate your direction in life. Meaning, if you're going to make a decision based off of your ways and your thinking and your thought processes. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You go about it how you go about it, and you learn the lesson that you need to learn, whether it's a positive way or a negative way. Why? Because that's going to have a lot of ammunition, that's going to have a lot of substance, that's going to have a lot of you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Data for you because you made a decision based off your thoughts, right? So by doing so, you're going to look back at it and you're going to be like, well, I didn't take so and so's advice. I didn't take my dad, mom, friend, uncle, etc's advice. I took my own advice and it worked. Or I took it and it didn't work, but it's okay. At least I'm content with it. At least I'm a little bit more in tune with myself instead of not. So basically, think of this as a radio frequency, right? There's always that static. So we got to find that station that's going to be clear, meaning you got to find that situation, and make it as clear as possible. Whether there's a little static or not, it doesn't matter. At least that is who you are as a person and as a man and how you are as a leader going forward in decision making and whatever it is. Because we all have our own ways of thinking, and I can't give you that one specific thing to follow because we're all different. But this one thing I can is just be okay and be confident in your decision. And if you fail, it's okay. At least that's one off of the checklist. Try another way. And with that being said, we're done with the podcast today. Tune in next time. Let's go.